The next thing I want to do is to set up controls for my skeleton, and I'm not going to activate any of them yet. They're just going to sit there and look pretty, and that is a really important step to take. So we'll do this two ways. The first way, we'll use this offset parent matrix script to try to just automatically snap controls into place. I will record a second video for those of you who can't get this to work, but we're going to try this first. So I've said a couple times that this method is brand new. They just added it in the 2020 release, and it can be a little finicky, so here's hoping that it goes really well. The trick with this, I think, is to make sure that all of your curves are in the same place before you start using the offset parent matrix. So what I'm going to do is going to be a little bit weird. I'm going to start with a box curve. That's going to become the control for the root joint, so I'm going to name it root CTL for control. Then I'm going to make a circle curve, and that's going to be my lower spine control. So we'll call this spine low CTL. Then another circle, and that will be for the spine mid. So we'll say spine mid CTL. And then I'll just keep going. This next one is going to be for the spine high. Let's spell that correctly. And then we'll do one for the neck, which is right here. So one more circle, we'll call this one neck CTL. I'm going to do one of the arms while I'm here. So the clavicle, I'm going to use a single arrow curve for the clavicle. So I'll call this my left clav CTL. Then I've got shoulder, elbow, and wrist. So that'll be 3 circles, shoulder, elbow, wrist. We'll call these left clav CTL, left shoulder CTL, and then we'll do left elbow CTL, and left wrist CTL. So I've got all of these things here at the origin. They're all lined up perfectly. I'm going to make the wrist the child of the elbow. Then I'll take the elbow, make that the child of the shoulder. The shoulder will be the child of the clavicle. And the clavicle will be the child of the spine. Actually, that'll be the child of the spine midjoint. So, yep, that's spine mid, clavicle, shoulder. So my organization here mimics the organization that's going on with the joints. I'll do the same thing with the root and the spine. So the neck will be the child of spine higher. Spine higher will be the child of spine mid. Spine mid will be the child of spine low. And spine low will be the child of the root. So like I said, these are going to mimic exactly what's going on with the joints. And now I can come into my offset matrix controls here. I'm going to select the root joint first, and then I'll use the control key to select the root control here in my outliner, and click Snap Curve to Joint. And the whole collection kind of turns and rotates and does some funky things, but gets to the root joint. So next I'll take the spine low joint, and control select the spine low control, snap curve to joint, grab the spine mid joint and the spine mid control, snap curve to joint. Then I'm going to keep going up a little bit, so we'll take the spine high joint, the spine high control, snap curve to joint, and then the neck and neck, snappy snappy. Okay, now I'll grab the left clav joint and the left clav control, and then the left shoulder joint and the left shoulder control, the left elbow joint and the left elbow control, and then the left wrist joint and the left wrist control. A couple things to make that easier. First, I'm clicking on the bone, and the bone always selects its parent joint. So the bone is a really handy selection tool. Second, I've got everything named in advance. It is so important in rigging to name all of your stuff. I cannot emphasize this enough. So that should be pretty easy and pretty quick, and I know it looks really funny right now. Half the controls you can't see and the other half just kind of stick through weirdly. So what I'm going to do next is turn on my character geometry, but set it to template. I could set my skeleton layer also to template, just so I can see it. And now I'm going to take the controls and go into their control vertex mode. I can take the control vertices for this curve. I'm just going to rotate it so it's a little easier to see around the geometry and scale it down all nice. Because I'm working with the control vertices, I am not actually affecting the curve, so when I go back to object mode, you'll see that its channels still say nice and zeroed. As I go up in my hierarchy, you'll see that the parent will always select the control vertices of the children, which does make selection a little bit awkward, and this may take you a couple of extra seconds. But it probably won't be that bad. You'll just go through control vertex, grab all of the control vertices you can find, and get them rotated around your piece. This arrow curve is probably the toughest one. I'm just going to make little boxes around each of its control vertices because I know that some of them are two vertices that overlap and some of them aren't. The reason I use an arrow for the clavicle is that the clavicle is pretty deep inside the actual shoulder area, and the arrow lets me kind of point at where the joint is. So I can make this a nice little tiny arrow and just have it point in here and say, hey, I am pointing at the clavicle area. So that's what I like to do with that arrow. And we'll go through and do the next circle. This one is the neck control. So we'll get that in there like that. This one is the higher spine control. So we'll go in there like that. Maybe scale it down a little bit, maybe set this to reference, and what I might do is just make this curve a little fancy and pull it up over the shoulder. Hoo-hoo, fancy, fancy! Let's set that back to reference and come in and grab the next circle. And again, sometimes the selection here is a little bit tough. But placing these curves was so easy, I hope that that makes up for it. Should do it. And let's scale that up just a smidge. Okay, on to the next one. And there. Lovely. Yes, I know I'm holding down a lot of shortcut keys. It's okay. Scale that in. And then here's the last one, that box curve. Again, I'm going to use little boxes to select all of the vertices because I know that some of them are two vertices in the same place. We'll just scale that up there. Maybe scale that a little bit up here. Set the body back to reference, and that looks pretty good. I think I may have overscaled this one. So let's get that a little bigger so people can see it outside of the body. Okay, perfect. So last but not least, I need the right arm. So let me take this clavicle and duplicate it, which should duplicate all of its children as well. I will use search and replace names, search for LF, replace with RT. That's my right side. And now I can go through and select this right side here, the right clavicle, and you'll see that that will automatically snap and reverse. So I did the left side first so I could shape the curves, and I'm going to do the right side next. And you'll see that I have to do each of the curves to make sure that each one is individually correctly aligned. But at the end, I will have all of my controls perfectly in place, easy peasy. So that is my upper body controls. And in the next video, I will show you what to do if that does not work.